This is a 2010 BMW K1300GT, 160 horsepower, 100 foot-pounds of torque, and this is one of the most perfect, amazing sport touring bikes I have ever ridden. Cue the intro. So to really see what this bike can do, I couldn't do it right here. I had to take this bike to the Poconos. 3 hours up, 3 hours back. While I was there, rode it for about 3 hours. I took it off-road. I took it to the lake. I took it through some trails, and this thing was amazing. The high speeds, awesome. Low speeds, the turning. This thing has the perfect tires for this bike. Michelin Pilot Power 2 CTs. You can control the suspension. You know what? Let me show you what I'm talking about. So we are in the Poconos, driving this beautiful K1300 GT, and I really have not had a lot of time to spend on this bike. I know the 0 to 60 was insanely fast, but I've been on this bike for the past 4 hours, and I can't say how much I love it. I love the bike. Heated seats, heated grips, the way it handles. I mean, this bike does so many things so well. Even with the windshield, look. Electronic controlled windshield, it moves up like 7 inches. If you get a little buffeting on top of your head, if you want that wind in your face, put this thing back down. If you want to block all the wind hitting you and the person behind you, stick that thing the whole way up. It's a beautiful thing. It's got traction control, it's got ABS, it's got cruise control. When you're looking for a bike that's if it's got tech, you know what I mean, the BMWs, it's really hard to beat a BMW. It's got so many things, it's monitoring so many things that when you look down over here, you're like, oh, there's too much stuff to worry about. Well, the cool thing about it is, if anything is wrong, if anything is monitored, it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing, it'll have a big yellow light up there, and then it'll tell you right down here. I had 38 pounds in my rear tire, and it said, nope, you need a couple more pounds, and it let me know when I topped it off, and everything felt great. Bike has plenty of compartments to put stuff in. You got your lock compartment right here. This is not a compartment right there. You got your 2 side bags, also locked. If you want to pull them off, you can take them off and bring them with you to your hotel if you don't want to dump all your stuff out. Bigfoot, I knew he was real. Another awesome thing that the BMW does with their K bikes, I think they do it with some of their R bikes too, is the electronically assisted brakes. We're talking 1 finger. Normally I'm a 2-finger braker, but this is pinky finger braking. I mean, it's insane. You actually hear the servo kind of click in. It makes a big bike brake like a very small, high-performance machine. And the way this thing pulls very hard. It just keeps on pulling the whole way up. I'm talking the whole way up. With the windshield, with the fairings the way they are, with the heated seat, it also has back control for the back person, so they can control their heated seat. With the heated grips, this bike has such a huge range of when you can ride this thing. It can be pretty cold outside. And also, you can plug in the heated vest, heated gear. You can ride this thing all year round, doesn't matter what temperature it is. I feel like this motorcycle was made for days like this, for people like me, the weather like this. It is so incredibly nice. It's just beautiful out here. The roads are awesome. It's a little chilly. You want to wear a jacket, you want to wear a sweatshirt, but when you're on the bike, it's just so incredibly perfect. Clutch is super light. Shifting this thing is super light. Now you'll notice this thing has peg drop downs, so it drops maybe about 2 inches, 1.5 inches, which is nice, gives me that little extra leg space. The reason you see so many BMWs with miles like this, I mean, 43,000 miles for a 9-year-old bike is not high miles for a BMW, and definitely not a bike like this. The reason you see bikes like this, because it's a travesty. It should be a crime against humanity, at least for motorcycles, for a bike to be sitting in the garage when you see a bike like this. These things need to be run. These things need to be loved on. And that's exactly what I'm doing with this thing today. It's awesome windy roads. This is amazing. Even though this is a big bike, this thing just throws it down in the corners. I would compare this bike. This bike should be compared to the Kawasaki Concours and the FJR 1300. It's in the same range of displacement. It's in very similar range of power. This actually might be one of the least power ones, but it puts the power to the ground so precisely that you don't even notice that it doesn't have as much power, because it uses all the power that it has perfectly to get you down the road. And what this category is just the purest form of a sport touring motorcycle. So think about the name, sport. this bike can handle. It is very much a sport bike. This bike is going to do 0 to 60 in around 3 seconds. This thing, it can perform, it can handle, it can take corners very fast, it can brake like nothing else on the road. And then touring, it's got the windshield, it's got the wide fairings, it's got all the accessories, all the gadgets that you could possibly want for your comfort and safety. It also has the bags. It's got a lot of bag space. You fill up one side, let your girlfriend fill up the other side. Let's be honest, she's gonna fill up both. You're gonna be wearing a backpack. This is the bike that the younger sport bike riders have not discovered yet. This is the segment of motorcycles that the younger sport bike riders have not discovered yet. Because when they realize that you could be just as fast and comfortable at the same time while riding on the street, it's going to be a game changer for those guys, and I know it was definitely a game changer for me. Now obviously I'm not going to take this thing on the track, but you know what, I'm not really dragging knee on it much anymore on the street. I saved that for the track. Let's talk about rear and side view visibility. Can we all just grow up and get past the point that mirrors are not necessarily the coolest looking thing on a motorcycle, but they are incredibly important. I'm so sick and tired of guys replacing, either just taking their mirrors off or putting mirrors that are this big, about the size of a quarter, on their motorcycles. Now this bike, the mirror placement, I almost see none of my shoulder or none of my elbow. Now I see it not just like I have a reference of where I'm at, but it's all behind me. I got great visibility behind me and on this side. It's amazing. Now BMWs are not the cheapest thing to maintain, but they're by far not even close to the most expensive thing to maintain, like a Ducati. You might hear some things about final drives, like, oh man, some guy, I was talking to a guy the other day, he was like, yeah, I had one of those, he had a BMW, it was an R bike, and it had a final, he's like, well, yeah, I had issues with the final drive, to put new final drive in. And I was like, man, that sounds like a bummer. I'm like, well, how many miles was it before you had to put a final drive? He's like, well, I've had about 98,000 miles. I'm like, oh, okay, that's about what time they say it should be replaced. The smoothness of the K bikes rivals the Honda Goldwings. It really does. It's an incredibly smooth bike. There's almost no vibration coming through your hands or your butt. The gauges are your classic speedometer on the left, tachometer on the right. Everything's real simple to see. You also have a nice gear indicator, which if you don't have one, you find out that you would use it all the time. You have to sit there and be like, am I in the highest gear? And start, trying to shift it into highest gear. You know what gear you're in 6th gear. Well, now it looks like it's starting to rain. That does not concern me very much. This bike has all this traction controls, all the stability controls that's going to help me keep on the road. It also is rocking Pilot Power 2CTs, which is one of the best tires you can get, especially for wet weather. What would concern me if there was more leaves on the road. There's not a tire in the world, there's not a traction control in the world that's going to keep you on the road when it's raining and you have wet leaves all over the ground. Deer also should be a concern for me, but it's not. I've already been hit by a deer, and statistically, that's not gonna happen. There's my leaves. Now, I'm not sure why they didn't put it on this bike. The BMW has the technology, and they had it back in 2010, but why didn't they put a quick shift on these sport touring bikes? Maybe they didn't think people would use it. If you ever rode an S1000RR, it's got an awesome quick shift program where you don't even let off the throttle, you don't grab the clutch, you just shift. It's amazing. It makes your shifts rapid fire, and I'm pretty sure it's just a program. It's just like a sensor inside the shifter, and then it's just a different code telling the computer to cut fuel and to cut spark for one brief moment. I might be wrong about that. Now this also has different settings for different riders and for different suspension comfort settings. You see, you can change it from normal, sport, comfort. You can also change how many helmets. I don't know actually how to do it, but you also change how many helmets are there, so you can set it up that if it's you and a passenger with luggage, it'll adjust the suspension, and then you go from sport to the different modes, all on the fly, all while you're riding. Now I'm sure you're not going to have like passengers fall, I'm not sure why you would need to change that on the fly while you're riding, unless you had a passenger on the back and they fell off, and you're like, oh no, let me go adjust my mode so my bike knows that it's just me now for optimum handling. You probably wouldn't just go back and pick up the passenger if they fall off, unless you didn't like them. Now if you've ever watched my videos, you know I'm a big hater of windshields, and the reason I don't like them is because a lot of times it's not at the right height. and when they're too low, you get too much wind hitting the top of your head. And when you have all the wind that should be hitting here, it's all hitting the top of your head, it just shakes it around, and for me, it gives me a headache. I'd rather just take all the wind to my chest. I don't know, I feel better that way. But when you have an adjustable windshield that can go different ranges, right now I can look over it. Most of the wind's hitting my helmet anyway. But if I want to put this thing up the whole way, when I'm on the highway, I'm looking right through the middle of the windshield, and everything's going right above me, and it really just quiets down the whole ride. In a sense, it's the windshield that I can take off and take on at the fly while I'm driving it. Now, if you were going to compare this to the R bike, it's going to have a lot of the same features, like the R1200GT, that's what it is. A couple different R bikes, not the GS, of course. But if you compare it to the Sport Touring R bike, the only difference is just the engine. I mean, there's differences, a lot of differences, but the main difference is just the engine. And you might wonder, like, why would they do that? Why would they make the very two similar bikes? This one's a lot smoother. This one has a different little power range, and the R bike is going to have that nice horizontal vibration that honestly it makes you fall in love with it. I like them both. I'd be happy with both. If I had to choose, I don't know which one I would choose, because it's very unique feeling, and you know, it's almost like going from for the reasons people love diesel engines, you know what I mean, they got a little vibration, that chug, you know what I mean, the power, and then the reason people like, you know, a nice smooth V12, you know, that's the kind of difference. Both have great aspects and no negatives. Surprisingly enough, no negatives.